The mansion stood like a fortress on the edge of the city, its gates tall and cold, its windows glowing with a kind of silence that money could never truly soften. Inside, behind those polished walls and crystal chandeliers, lived a man who had everything the world told him mattered: wealth, power, influence. Yet, for all his success, for all his empire, there was one ache no amount of fortune could erase. His twin children, Emma and Ethan, were believed to be completely blind. From the day they were born, doctors had shaken their heads, whispering about the rare condition that had robbed them of sight. Their father, Daniel, had accepted it reluctantly, pouring resources into specialists and treatments across the globe, but nothing changed. At just 7 years old, the twins lived in darkness, or so everyone thought. The children were loved, but they were sheltered. The house staff spoke in hushed tones around them, guiding them carefully through corridors, placing toys in their hands rather than letting them discover them. The world assumed the twins could never see the beauty of the life their father had built. Daniel hired only the best caregivers, tutors, and staff, demanding perfection in every role. When a new maid was brought into the household, no one expected her to be any different. Her name was Clara. She wasn't polished like the others. Her resume was thin, her clothes simple, her shoes worn. She had known hunger, loss, and the sting of struggle, but she carried something that money couldn't buy: gentleness, a way of noticing what others overlooked. On her first day, Clara was told, "The twins are fragile. Treat them with care, speak slowly, guide them gently. Remember, they cannot see." She nodded, but in her heart, she wasn't convinced that the only way to care was to pity. That afternoon, she found Emma sitting by the window, her small hands resting on the sill, face tilted toward the sun. Clara didn't interrupt, she just watched. Something about the way Emma's head moved, how her eyes fluttered in the light, caught her off guard. There was a flicker there, faint but real, as though her eyes were reaching for something. Days passed, and Clara began to notice more. Ethan would pause when she held up a brightly colored ball, almost as if following its shadow. Emma giggled when Clara wore her red scarf, as if she could sense more than just the fabric's touch. They weren't random moments. They were patterns, clues no one else had cared enough to piece together. One evening, as the sun sank and the house grew quiet, Clara decided to test her instincts. She walked into the twins' room carrying nothing but a candle. She set it on the table, its flame flickering in the dark. Then, softly, she called Ethan's name. He turned, directly toward the light. Her heart nearly stopped. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling, "can you see this?" The boy blinked, his lips parting. For a moment there was silence. Then, in a voice fragile as glass, he said, "It's glowing." Tears rushed to Clara's eyes. She dropped to her knees, holding his little hands. "You can see." She choked out, "Even if just a little, you can see." Emma stirred, sitting up from her bed. "What's glowing?" she asked curiously. Clara moved the candle closer. Emma's eyes widened, and for the first time she gasped at something beyond touch and sound. "It's warm and shiny," she whispered, her face breaking into a smile so radiant it seemed to light the whole room. Clara's chest tightened with joy and disbelief. The twins weren't blind. Not completely. They had fragments of vision, sparks of sight that had been buried beneath years of assumptions. No one had seen it. No one had tried. The next morning, Clara couldn't hold it in. She rushed to Daniel's study, her hands shaking. He barely looked up from his papers when she burst in. "Sir, I know this will sound impossible." She began, "But your children, they're not completely blind." Daniel's pen froze. Slowly, he lifted his eyes, his face hardened by years of disappointment. "Don't," he warned, "don't give me hope. I saw it with my own eyes." Clara insisted. Ethan followed a flame. Emma described its glow. "Please, come and see for yourself." Against his instinct, against the armor he had built around his heart, Daniel followed her upstairs. Clara lit the candle again. "Ethan," she said softly, "look." The boy turned, his gaze landing straight on the flickering flame. Daniel's breath caught. "Emma," Clara whispered, "what do you see?" The little girl smiled. "It's dancing." Daniel staggered back, his hands trembling. For years, he had poured millions into sterile clinics, cutting edge machines, renowned specialists. Yet it was a maid with nothing but heart who uncovered the truth. His knees nearly gave way as he sank down beside them, pulling his children close, his tears spilling freely. That moment changed everything. From then on, the house no longer revolved around limitations but possibilities. Clara introduced colors into their world: paintbrushes, bright scarves, stained glass catching morning sun. She encouraged them to reach, to test, to believe in what their eyes could find. For the first time, the twins didn't just touch their toys, they chased them. They didn't just listen to stories, they followed the illustrations with eager little fingers. Daniel's heart, once bound in grief, softened in ways he hadn't thought possible. He began to join them, sitting on the floor with blocks and paints, laughing when tiny hands guided his much larger ones. For the first time, his home wasn't just filled with wealth, it was filled with wonder. And through it all, Clara remained not as a servant, but as the woman who had reminded a broken family that miracles don't always come in the way we expect. Sometimes they come through ordinary kindness, through eyes that notice, through a heart that refuses to give up on hope. The world outside continued its rush of power and business, but inside those mansion walls, a father learned to see through his children's eyes, and two little souls learned that their darkness was not complete. It was Clara, the maid no one thought mattered, who had uncovered a secret that changed not just their lives, but the meaning of what it truly means to see.